Right. And welcome to the After Fish After Show. I'm here with Amanda, your Fish DJ, and Brian Brinkman, and we're about ready to go over the show we just saw. So, overall, first impressions, just right off the bat of the show.
Honestly, it kind of reminded me of last night in a lot of cases. I loved like the first 3 quarters of the show. Um, and then I liked a lot of the songs that they picked in the second, like later in the second set, but I don't know how much it worked totally for me. I think the first set and the tweezer just were like blew me away. And I was like at such a high. I know we were talking before we went live, Amanda, you loved the second set. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on that. But for me, I feel like I walked away with like 2 shows that felt very similar to each other.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I know we're going to get there. So definitely we'll have more to share. But yeah, I think the second set, I mean, even though it ended in maybe a little more of a typical fashion, I feel like there were some really great moments and song choices there that I really appreciated that just worked for me.
I think overall, the show kind of reminded me of like a road trip where like it starts off and you get to the cruising speed, your first set, and you're on the highway, and then tweezer is when you're arriving at your destination, and you get those last few stretches of highway that seem to fly by because you're getting closer, and then when it gets into the slower songs, it's like the neighborhood where like you have to
focus
accept
again
that it's gonna go slow and it's going to be fine. There's lots of beauty in those moments. You just have to have the patience for it. And overall, that's kind of how the show felt to me.
I love that. You know, I was thinking, so I think I posted, I did not go on Twitter for the second set because I just was kind of wanting to get in my own head and not really see much of anything. But, you know, I was saying I'm kind of meta tonight. And I was just thinking at this point in the year and even the tour, you know, you're getting most songs that you've heard already, at least this year. I think Taste and Wingsuit maybe were the 2 we heard tonight that they haven't played since 21. If I was looking
Show
at
of
it
Life
correctly.
also was that.
Yeah.
Those first 2.
You know,
totally.
for the like most of the show. So it's like, you know, you're looking for comparisons. That's what we do. And sometimes it's hard for me to feel like what's new, what's happening. But I feel like there were some things tonight that at least made me think a little bit. So that was good.
Right.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I was gonna say let's just dive in then and start at the top with a Wave of Hope. I think it was a great jam to open the show. I think it went deep for an opener.
Can I say something controversial? I think off the bat, it might rile up some of your listeners just based on the content from last night.
Let's do it.
Oh yes.
So I think Wave of Hope has like immediately entered the like a very rare space in Phish history, like your Down with Disease, your Tweezer, your Mike song from the 90s, your Ghost from 1997, your Everything's Right from the last couple of years, Blaze On from 2015 range, your song that like when they play it, they just know how to jam it and they don't even have to, there's zero effort, it sounds like, to leave the song. There's new segments of creativity that come up immediately afterwards. For whatever reason, this song just connects with this band. And the Deer Creek version that I see in the comments here was absolutely a brilliant like debut of a jamming version of the song that had been played a few times before that. The Hartford version was one of my favorite jams of this year. And I don't know if this version was necessarily up to those standards in terms of like the depth of improvisation that it explored, but like they went 0 to 100. You talk road trip, like you're getting on the highway immediately and there's no traffic and you're just cruising. It's like getting on the highway in like Nebraska when you're driving back out here to Colorado. And like you get from the Holiday Inn, get on the highway, there's no one around you and you just start cruising.
Right.
That jam, like that ripped the show open right from the gates.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love an extended metaphor, so I'm all for what's happening right now.
We're just diving into the road trip.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I don't disagree at all. You know, in my mind, I also think, how did someone describe it? I think one of the top reviews of this song is like, it was the hand sanitizer and toilet paper phase of lockdown when this was written, right? So number one, that's always on my mind when I just picture where we all were when this was coming out and Lonely Trip and all that. But is it a subliminal message? Is it just wishful thinking for all of us? I want to be there. I want to be with them when they're playing that song. I honestly do.
Right. It's
Yeah.
great. And following it up in the number 2 spot with Dogs Still Things, like, oh, I love that song. Huge fan of the choice.
It's
one of those
one.
Yeah, it's only been played 41 times, which is crazy. It debuted in 97. This was so it's usually in like a 20 to 100 show gap. It was played 19 shows ago, the tour opener in Alabama, and then 10 shows prior to that, the night before Halloween, the Animal Show. It's such a weird, spooky tale, this song. And it like going along with the blues riff. I don't know. It was good to get like another rarity here in this run and like have that be kind of the way to like set the table on tonight that was going to be a little unexpected out the gates.
Yeah. And they kind of do, they do similar things with it. You're right, because it has had those big, years long breaks over time. It does always feel like a special thing. I would love at some point in time to see them try something just a little bit different with it. But the way it is great. I mean, it works. And I think it's just a nice little, portion of music to kind of see where you're going to go next. So didn't expect that one in the second slot at all, though. I like that.
It's the year where you could hear this song go into and become like an 11-minute long jam. It's like a number of songs from this set where it just, if any year could happen, it's this year.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Speaking of songs I thought that were going to go pretty long, the AC/DC bag that's coming up next. I thought it was going to go long there for a minute.
I mean, it went, this built, I felt off the Philly version. Like, I think we're still not cracking like 10, 11 minutes on it, but.
No, I got 10 minutes for this one.
Yeah, which was about what the Philly one was, but like, I feel like they escape the song quick enough that you get a good 5-6 minutes of like really solid improvisation. It definitely can go longer. I don't know, man. One of the first jams that ever hooked me on this band was the AC/DC bag from Boise, Idaho, 9/14/99. And like that is a very special place in my heart. And so the fact that they're just starting to re-explore AC/DC bag has me so excited. Yeah. I hope that this really turns into a return jam vehicle.
Yeah, it's got a good pedigree for it, for sure, to come back to. And I was laughing a little bit. I'm like, wait a second, Wave of Hope to No Future at All. That would have been a fun song to kind of like end with. But I'm like, we're already there. So like, what's left? Those are like really crazy bookends. I was just sitting there like, that's interesting.
No, it's funny because like AC/DC bag is that like crossroads of the Gamehenge revolution.
Yeah, totally.
And A Wave of Hope is like 2020 was such a revolutionary year. There was like that was in the air, and it's what happens when people really sacrifice themselves.
Yeah. I warned you. The PhD is like a warning label in my handle. It is not just letters. So
I love it. Keep it going.
Yeah. Speaking of keeping going, though, Sparkle. Now, I don't know. I take it or leave it. It's a Sparkle. It's a fun song.
I think it works in the slot. I think that's like the best. Like it's 3 minutes of just contained energy. I don't think I'll ever not want to hear a riff song at a Phish show.
Right.
That was my first Phish album, and like that album just like it's perfection. And to get like just that little octane of energy to then go into Back on the Train, like have those like 2 moments be kind of combined of like it's just energy across the board coming out of this AC/DC bag jam.
Yeah. Sure. Kind of has to go somewhere. I think it's like a little combustible thing. So yeah. And again, it's one of those things like, here's where we're going. Cool. Probably not too many surprises, although you never know, of course. And you mentioned Back on the Train. I mean, just groovy, fun beat there. It's a good one. It's always so good. I love it.
It's the Phish Chugel. It's possum. Like it just,
nice.
It sounds like you're in a bar and there's like sawdust on the floor, and like there's just a band that has this like killer backbeat and just a total groove. Like it's the type of thing you want to drink like light beer to, and it works perfectly. I love this song so much, and they've jammed it at times. I see someone mention the Fukuoka version, the Miami 09 version, but like even when it's just contained, it's got so much to it.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because this has been kind of an ongoing conversation in one of my Discord servers, which is reminding ourselves that you don't need 20 minutes every time for everything to be awesome. And that's something that we are kind of consistently calling each other out on at points. And so that's a great example, I think, of one that it's going to go however it goes.
Right.
That's something that they've been like so conscious of. It feels like for a lot of 3.0. And I think that like they've had moments where it's really worked in their favor and moments where it hasn't. Like when it has, they take like a song and like expand the idea of the song to like 9 or 10 minutes. It never leaves the like musical space that the song's in, but it really feels like a complete statement still. And this Back on the Train is like a great platform for that. Wolfman's Brother's similar to that.
You know what's becoming a pretty good platform for that?
I know where you're going. This is good transitioning here.
Yeah. Mull.
Mull, man.
Yeah. This is the second one that's gone over 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Deer Creek version was great.
Yeah.
So I felt so bad for Mike for so many years because he would like debut one song a year and they would just kind of play it every like 8 shows. And it was like, cool. You had your quota, unless it's Mike's song. We're not going to revisit like these new songs all that often. They're never going to really be in the rotation. And for some reason, Mull just felt like it clicked with the band last year, like right away. And there's a great version from the Gorge that like didn't jam, but like it's kind of like we were just talking about Back on the Train. It like just expanded the idea of that song. This went freaking deep. Amanda, what did you think of this?
Well, I actually prepared a brief statement on Mull.
Please.
Okay.
Please.
No, I'm just kidding.
Go
But
ahead.
I definitely do want to say, though, because so I did share a couple things I was thinking about Mull, which really it was before that jam went where it went. It was kind of right after the second chorus. And I think I just said something like, man, you know, part of me would love for the song to kind of just pick up here because I really love what they do with this, you know, from this point on. And I think that ruffled a couple of feathers of, you know, not me saying I didn't like the song, and the lyrics are there. It's Phish. It's a Gordon song. I mean, they're no better, worse, different, or more or less weird than anything else. But there's just something really special to me about when they pick up with whatever they're going to do, you know, after the lyrics. So not a hater. I just really love where they can run with it. And I feel like they definitely did that tonight. I was happy with that.
And I'm happy for Kevin, the usual host of this show. He loves this song and he loves the taco line and he got it in person. So
yeah.
Shout out
I was kind of hoping to hear him, you know, like call in even and just be like, give us his, you know, on the spot.
Yeah. I often find a lot of Mike's, like newer Mike songs, sound like he wrote like 6 different songs and then figured out how do I just like jam these all together. And so you get these like segments within the songs. And they all kind of sound aligned. Mull, I mean, it starts out and you're like, is this 555? Is like, what song are we in right now? It could be like 5 different Gordo songs. It has that just like Little Feat type of groove to it. But I don't know. The band seems to have picked up on this. And like, you could see Trey at one point start to move away from the song. And he was just looking up at the balcony on Page side, and he just gave Mike a quick look back as if to be like, are you okay with us exploring this? And got the go ahead, and they just went for it. And I mean, that to then fade into Foam was, that is expert set listing. Nobody's predicting it. It's kind of an eerie, early, slightly rare now Phish song. And to come out of a really creative jam, like a fully thought out jam, that like counters the brightness of A Wave of Hope at the start of the set, and then to go into something like Foam, it was just this might have been my favorite part of the whole show.
Yeah, that was my words exactly. Were nice fade, and Foam to me is such, I don't know if pretty is even acceptable. It's like such a delicate song. There's so much orchestration and different things going on there. I would not have thought necessarily to do that kind of transition, but it was so well done. It was just almost didn't even realize what was happening. I mean, that's how good it was. It was just there. Yeah, really. So I can't wait to listen to that again.
Yeah, it was. And Foam's always welcomed. I don't think there's ever a time where like you don't hear that little notes and just be like, yes, you know.
And that was when it had a pause, right? A little pause since 21. I think it had been a minute.
Yeah, this was the first in 15 shows. We had one at
South Carolina,
Charleston, but that was the first since Dick's, which was the first since what would that have been? Alpharetta, I think, which was the first since 2019. So like it's like every 25 to 30 shows you get this song, which is wild that they can still play it as well as they currently are. Like that was a pretty tight version of Foam.
Yeah, which played right into a really tight version of Ghost to close the set.
Oh man, that was so good.
Things, yeah.
They have that like path that they usually take in Ghost when it closes a set, where it like goes to A major and just like takes you to heaven, like straight away, and it peaks and it's fun. And it's electric when you're in the room, but it sometimes doesn't totally hold up on tape. This one went to so many different cool spaces and like still got the peak and got like the, all right, this is the set closing vibe to it without like walking a familiar path. It felt very new, the music that they were playing. I don't know if you guys agreed with that.
They did use the Ghost to also close in Bethel Woods, like the last time they played it. So
right, it's a similar spot right now. They did that at MSG as well. It could use a new place in the set
for sure. I think I'm just a fan of the recurring motif. You know, that repetition. Ghost has some really good stuff tonight going into that, where you can just get in your headspace. And you know that this is probably going to be the end of the set for the reasons that we were just saying. But it's good. It felt like we really had a nice, complete set of music tonight to start the show. You know, it's like, okay, I'm ready mentally for this set break. But I'm not always there.
Yeah, I'm curious what this is going to sound like going back to it, because I went back this morning and listened again to last night's show. And I really enjoyed set one last night, but I enjoyed it even more on re-listen. This, I walked away feeling, I got a couple messages from people. I kind of agreed with this, that this was the strongest first set of the tour. And it kind of jumped out at me as like, you know, you've got Wave of Hope, Bag, Ghost as all, or Mull and Ghost as these four unique jam vehicles, and then a bunch of unexpected songs thrown in there. It felt like something I'll go back and listen to over and over and over again.
Right.
Agree.
Definitely. And then they come out in set two with Haley's, which I don't know how I like it as an opener, but it gets the job done. It wouldn't be like within one of the top 5 songs I would pick for an opener. Well, but I liked it in that spot.
They dropped, I mean, it felt like, and this is not a diss at all, but it was like, now I know where they were going with the set, but at the time I'm like, they just dropped that like it had the heat of a million burning suns. Like it was there, and then you're like, whoa, okay, 6 minutes or something. So I just think it's what they did with it, but I didn't care because of what happened after that. So
yeah, I don't know the last time I opened a second set. I was really excited by the placement for it, and I kind of wish it hasn't been in a second set since 7/13/2019, which it opened up. That was Alpine 2019. It's always an interesting spot for it, because like historically, you know, you think back to Hampton 97 whenever it starts the second set, and you think about like the band just diving as deep as possible into this song. This didn't do that, but it got us to Tweezer, which was a really significant moment in the overall show. And in a lot of cases, like I feel like that was the goal of this, was to give you that burst of energy that you're talking about, and then be like, boom, here, we're right into Tweezer.
Right. And
I'm seeing Anderson's comment there. Yeah, there's so many references you could make to Hampton, right? And those shows, but that is true. So again, that comparison thing, try not to do that. But yeah, I'm curious if I can jump ahead to Tweezer.
Yeah,
I had a question I wrote down. So about 14, 15 minutes in, I was chatting with some friends. I'm like, I swear I am hearing some kind of classic rock reference, some guitar stuff, Hendrix-ish. And I was like, it could just be me. And obviously we all hear our own thing, but I was just loving, there's a little section there, a couple minutes long. It may have started before that, but I wasn't really keeping track at that point. I don't know if any of you picked up anything that just felt like they were really almost taking it into a different category.
From a Phish standpoint, it reminded me of the Raleigh 99 tweezer, which also has a very heroic classic rock feel. I don't know what key it's in, but like it moves to a musical space that they just don't typically go to. And I definitely heard that. I don't know exactly where this was, but I think to your point, it was around 14 minutes. It felt like I just thought this tweezer was filled with ideas, and that was one of them that they went to that ended up just like kind of blowing my mind. It was like every 3 minutes they were in a new musical space.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it was the best. It was the best, I think, of what they bring to songs that we know so well. And I love where they ended up taking it to, because to me, this was the start of the segment of the second set that I personally just really, I wanted to go with them. They had me, like wherever they were taking me.
Where did they have you exactly? Because it took a minute for me to get on board.
I hear you.
You know.
So Kevin's heard me say this now multiple times, and so I'm going to just say it again for the hell of it. I'm not necessarily like a kumbaya, emotionally driven Phish fan. In real life, maybe different. I want the energy. I want it to grind out. But Wingsuit is not always a song that I'm necessarily going to really be grooving to in a certain way. But the way that they brought that into the picture just felt so right. And especially for a song like that, let's face it, had kind of an auspicious beginning anyway. There's a lot of opinions about it. I really felt like they kind of just took us and guided us there. And it was great. So that's where I was.
Right.
It's become something of a rarity, Wingsuit. The last time it was played was 39 shows ago, San Francisco Night 2. Before that, it was 25 shows earlier, Mexico 2020. I love this song. I think it's a real what's the right word? It's a really kind of vulnerable space for them to write in. Like you're basically writing about just like risking failure, which is to me the most interesting thing about a Phish show is every night they go up there and they risk the fact that they could play something that it would be total shit. And sometimes it is. And that's like the cool, really exciting thing. And when they connect and it's brilliant, like that pushes me forward as a listener, as a fan. And Wingsuit kind of embodies that lyrically. I also think it touches on like David Gilmour. It's got this like ambient space that at the start of it that I really dig. That said, and I'm really interested to get into this conversation because I lost the thread a little bit at this point. And part of it was, I'm curious what this will sound like to me going back. The tweezer sounded to me on par with the Wave of Hope from Hartford, the Bangor Disease, like the best jams of the year. And it felt like they just had endless ideas to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And it felt immediately in the moment like a bail to me. And it felt like that happened a couple other times. Again, I love Wingsuit, so I wasn't necessarily having a hard time with it being Wingsuit, but that was how I interpret it. I'm curious to hear as like this keeps going on, like because you sound like you were like locked in, and that's really cool.
And I was surprised because Wingsuit is not one that I'm necessarily going to be, jumping up and down for.
We're like on polar opposites of this.
Isn't that crazy? Oh, I love it. This is good. This is good. Okay, this is great. See, I like this. I think it's awesome that, we hear different things. I feel like, there's a little boost there to go back into tweezer.
Totally.
And so I appreciated that. I think, you're going from, kind of these jams that are really taking you far out there. And even in Wingsuit is about 10 minutes or so, I think. They got into some stuff there. So it's a little heavy on the listening side, I think, of just really staying with it. I got my meatball effect. And Brian, you haven't heard me on here before, but anytime Gordon does an effect, I go back to some article I read in a magazine like 30 years ago, the meatball pedal. So they're all meatball pedal effects for me, whatever he's doing, because that's the only one I remember. But it was good. It was kind of like, okay, I can go back and breathe again. And then Joy, after that, it's like, okay, we're going back into something now that's on that more emotional spectrum too.
Right. And Joy is such a great song. I know it kind of slows down the set, but it just brings such a sense of, I don't know, just everybody there swaying and the whole we want you to be happy, and just, I don't know, it's another one of those subtle moments why like Phish is such a great band, but it has nothing to do with jamming, you know.
Yeah, I thought about that in two places to what you guys are talking about. The tweezer, the second tweezer was going, like, it was in a cool area, but it kind of felt redundant in a sense, and it felt like, okay, we probably are going to move on. And you could see Trey talking with Mike and Paige, or Mike and Phish. And when they went into Birds, he gave a fist bump to Fishman. Like, you nailed that. Like, that transition, we nailed that. That was as tight as possible. And like that plus joy of what you guys are talking about from a lyrical standpoint, I think gets to the fact that like the jamming is just a part of it. Like, at the end of the day, they are a rock band that wants to hit these changes sometimes and like really drive some energy into the audience. They want to have that contemplative ballad that is stuck midway through the second set that like lets everyone kind of reflect, catch their breath, and then move on. I did really enjoy the Birds of a Feather jam, and maybe that contributed to, I don't know how long it was. I know the show just appeared, but there were moments where it felt like they were taking off and that they were going to explore some really cool terrain. And then they went into Joy. And so perhaps on re-listen, this will sound a bit different, but in the moment it felt a little herky jerky to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think Birds was just under 10 minutes or so, like somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
You know, for Joy, well, I had kind of a, I don't know if it's controversial or not, take on my take on Joy, which is definitely different than I think the accepted ones. I do see it ultimately as, you know, a positive song, but I just think it's not there yet. I think there's the potential for joy, but I don't see that in the song itself. And so I always enjoy hearing that because I think very deeply every time they play that. And actually the last time I was on, I think was Bethel Night 2, maybe, where they had played it. And they played Brian and Robert in the same show in the set before. We had a whole thing, so I won't go into that again. But, you know, it's one that's there, I think, to kind of really get your wheels turning a little bit.
Yeah.
I always think of it as like the evolutionary like step forward for Trey to write Miss You. Like he needed to write a song like Joy, and then 5-6 years later he could write Miss You. And those two songs, like they hit really hard, you know, from a content standpoint in terms of what he's writing about, but then like how it applies to all of us as listeners.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's why I love it, because we could all take something from that for sure.
Yeah.
And then they moved it along with Taste, which, go ahead.
Oh, did you see me go?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I did that. Sorry. I don't know, man. So, I mean, I still remember the Walnut Creek 97 Taste. And do you guys remember that one? It was so epic. And honestly, just the crescendos, I mean, the song, the arrangement, everything is just, it stokes me every time. I have some really good memories of seeing this one live. So, you know, I still prefer to call it Tasty Thog, but but there's so many quotables from this one. I mean, I forget sometimes really what this brings, because we don't really hear it as much these days as some others. So
yeah, this was the first in 55 shows, and pretty much since 2014 has been in like a 20 to 30 to 40 show rotation. Like it's a rarity right now. I thought it was a really good version. I thought it was really good placement. I don't know, this song from a structural standpoint, it always makes me think back to 95 and 96 when they were moving towards that 97 sound, that like real tight groove based one band with, you know, however many limbs, just like, you know, focused in a democratic manner together. And it's just wild to hear that now and like think back to where the band was at in the mid 1990s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So many transitions happening. And of course at the time, you know, we're looking, oh, Billy Breeze, there's acoustic things happening, right? Like, this is great. And it's really fun to go back and take the same song, I think, and just listen to it 4 or 5 times, you know, within that period. And you can kind of just hear how they were moving it and doing different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they moved along with What's the Use, which is another good song. I mean, I got no qualms about it. That's for sure.
I feel like they're loving this thing where they now bring it down to complete silence everywhere they play it. And the last time I saw it was at the Forum in LA, and they just brought the entire place down to silence. The lights went off on stage, and it was like everyone's shadows in the venue. It was such a cool effect. And they had a good shot from the stage out towards the audience when they brought it down to silence. And it's such an eerie vibe whenever they do that. And it feels like a magic trick, like a classic rock magic trick that they're playing. Like it feels like Floydian in some cases in terms of how they're trying to mess with the audience. And I don't know. It was nice here. It was a good transition out of Taste.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was trying to think of the right word. Clearly, I'm not a musician. I'm like, is it the tone, melody? What is it? Right. And I feel like for a long time, I was chasing that one. If I'm just trying to think back to my own personal kind of, Phish history. And so, although, they have been breaking it out, it always feels really like an unusual thing for them to be doing. Although I feel like that's changing a little bit. I don't know. It felt like kind of maybe a cohesive end to that part of the set, possibly. I don't know, because I feel like definitely there was a shift,
right,
kind of as we got out of this. So
it kind of works like a ballad in that standpoint, that it allows the band to transition to another state. And this kind of like may speak to some of my, I don't know if it's that I didn't enjoy it, but like aspects of the second set that like I wasn't totally on board or following in the moment. There was a lot of like, here's some energy, now we're going to take it. Here's some energy, now we're going to take it. I don't know. Maybe that just is me, and like on re-listen, it'll sound a little bit clearer. But like, I definitely feel it when they finish this. You knew we're kind of moving directly towards the end of the show.
Mm-hmm. I was like, can they just do Howling to go, right? And I was like, it's not going to happen. I mean, and then they clearly, went on after that. But I feel like they could have just really gone with that for a while. And unlikely as it may have been, I really dig that. I mean, I don't know. I guess I was maybe needing a little more of a breather than I thought, given what, the 4 or 5 songs before that had been.
Right. And
the Howling is like, Trey just seems to be in love with that groove. Like it's all it is to me, is like he just wants to play that groove. It allows the band to just like vamp out for like 9 minutes long. It's kind of like a modern day 2001 in that standpoint.
Right.
Oh, I like that. That's cool. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but I could definitely see it really getting to that place for sure, and really like having that mark on it. And maybe that's what I wanted. Maybe I wanted something that was just gonna take off and really go for it.
That was kind of it for me. Is like it's almost like a signal at this point. It kind of reminds me of Death Don't Hurt Very Long, when that came out in like 2018, 2019, where it's kind of just the song that they use as, or Martian Monster in 2014 and 15, like couple chords, bunch of effects, and we're just going to have a dance party. And it feels slightly limited in that box. It's fun as hell. And I definitely thought like with Santos being next, like there was almost an Interstellar groove party theme to the last quarter of the set. That you got What's the Use, you're floating in space, you get the Howling, Sci-Fi Soldiers, and then you end it with Santos. I see Andrew said like a hood could have worked really nicely, or like that would have like compacted the set in a little bit of a different way, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if we wanted to like extend the road trip metaphor, these 2 songs were definitely the party because you've arrived and it's over. And I think all the sci-fi and Kazot stuff works for that. I think the further away we are from the actual gimmicks, the better the songs are, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've arrived home. All your buddies are there that you haven't seen in 6 months, and you all party around a bonfire. And these are the songs that do that for you. Yeah, I think both things work. It's
Mm-hmm.
the arrival, but it's also it's the sense of there was a moment with these songs when they debuted, and they were so like tied to that album and to that Halloween set, but now they get to like kind of stretch a little bit.
Yeah. And it feels good. It feels right too, because I think you need to do something with what I feel may have been a buildup internally of energy from earlier in the set. And so it's a great release, honestly. And I'm someone, I don't mind if, like Santos, if it's whether it's the encore or whichever set, as a closer, that's its trajectory, like well over 50% of the time, that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like I'm down for that. And that's actually one of my son's favorite songs. And he heard it. He's like, this is so great. And it gets a reaction, I think, out of people a lot of the time that is super positive. And so just fun.
Yeah. And then before we wrap it up, I do want to talk about that show of life that we had in the Encore, because it's been a minute since we've got one of those.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. It was 53 shows. It was Hershey, August 11th. That was night 2 of Hershey. I loved that show from last year. That had a great Ruby Waves, great Haley's Comet. That's all these like 3.0, 4.0, very earnest biographical songs from Trey. Show of Life is one of my favorites. It hits like right in the heart. It says what it is, but in a colorful way. It tells a story. You talk about a road trip vibe. Like, this is the contemplative. We're looking back on how great it was being on the road. You may not feel very well because you ate some crappy fast food when you shouldn't have eaten it because you were late in the road trip, but you were hungry. But, you had some great memories.
Yeah.
You saw some great sights, great sunset in an unexpected place, good album selection from the Passengers. I don't know. It's got that vibe to it. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Any final thoughts? Any final words of wisdom about this show before we wrap it up?
I'm really excited to go back and listen to this first set and this tweezer. I'm going to spin this whole show again. I do it with everything throughout the tour. I'll be curious to hear if I hear set 2 any differently. But I'm really, really excited to go back and listen to set 1.
Right.
Nice.
And then what do you have going on tomorrow again, Brian?
Tomorrow we've got RJ is back home from his weekend scene. He's been seeing Phish for weeks. He's back home though. He's hanging with us. We've also got Tim and Kevin from the Wook Plus channel hanging with us. They're going to be joining us to talk about. So Kevin will be hopefully well rested, although after tonight's show he may be going out and grabbing a couple, hanging out, having a good time. But we'll get their thoughts on the show as well. So it should be a really good way to cap off. Merriweather Post is always such a great way to see the band, or a great place to see the band. And there's always such a convergence of the Northeast crowd, the Southern crowd, that Maryland crowd that exists. And it'll be really cool to see them there.
Oh, awesome. For sure. You got anything you want to plug, Amanda?
Let's see here. So I will just mention that I know we mention this occasionally. So I've got a weekly radio show on Homegrown Radio on Wednesdays. And I've got some great local acts from out here in Colorado coming up in the next couple weeks. A lot of international stuff I do. So I would say just look for me. If you look for PHDj, there's not many of us. So you will generally find me. And you can get all the links, and everything goes on archive too.
All right. And then as for Wook Plus, tune in Wednesday, and we got the guys from Space Bacon on the lot, and they'll be recapping their Merriweather experiences and talking all sorts of Phish things. But thanks for tuning in tonight, and we will see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.